Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with Riot Kent again this week, and we are going to do the patch 11.5 Post Mortem. This is where we go over the changes we made last patch and talk about what worked, what didn't, what we did right, and what we screwed up royally. So, this was an important patch for us because it was one that a lot of regions were going into their big qualifiers to see who's going to Worlds. So we really wanted to get this right. And I have to say, Kent, I'm proud of you and the team because we had a patch all locked, ready to go. And then we came in Monday and went, we've learned new things. Quick, let's change it all. And we did that. And I think it overall panned out really well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was good that we basically were able to react and kind of predict a little bit. And for a patch that's this important, it was really good that we were able to get those like final changes out in time for the Saturdays and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday there were like these big tournaments. I think Thursday and Friday too. But yeah. Really happy that we were able to prioritize making sure this patch was in a really good state.
Yeah. Would love to sit here and talk about the meta and all the things we saw all the tournament, but it's not the purpose of this video. So let's just jump into what changed and how we think it went. So, Debuff Overhaul. I think this didn't change anything as we said it wasn't going to, and guess what? It didn't. So, but hopefully it sets us up for success in the future. Although I will say in the next patch rundown, it kind of messed with us a bit because we went to nerf an item and all of a sudden our values for the 3 different values of armor penetration get all screwed up. So in that regard, it's already kind of been like a bit of an oof, but I think it's still going to be good for the long-term health of the game.
Yeah, I think internally, long term, this will be good for us. But in the immediate, we have a lot of adjusting and like learning how to work with this new system. But it's all like internal struggles. So
Yeah. All right. This one is one of the ones we snuck in at the last minute, but this was the chosen level 7 odds going from 5% to 2%. I am really happy with this change. I've been playing a lot on this patch trying to do my chosen list, and the roll downs at 7 feel correct now, where it's like most of the time you're seeing 3s and 2s, and occasionally a 4 comes up, but most of the time when it comes up, it's not one you're ready for, and you have to make a hard decision, and it feels good, but it's tough. And generally, we didn't see anyone like in the tournaments go really crazy with this, so this just seems like it did exactly what we wanted it to, and I'm glad we did it.
I'm really happy that we got this in last minute. I think it affected the tournament in a positive way, and overall, just like the patch, we weren't seeing level 7 chosen forecasts every game anymore. This is like once every few games, and so it's a lot better. I'm really happy with this change and how it turned out.
Yeah. And again, there will always be those players that want it to be 0%, but honestly, the few times it does show up, it's like, oh, you see a Tryndamere at level 7, but you have keeper items. Do you take this? You feel like you should. It's like, it creates really cool tension and really cool decision making. So I'm still happy with this, and I can't see a world where we change this. So
Yeah.
all right, traits. Ooh, I can't wait to pick on you for this one. Okay. The keeper change to keeper 6, I think was good. It definitely brought keeper down in power, but not in a way that like destroyed the keeper comp. If anything, the keeper comp is still too good, especially in the mid game. So, but I'm glad we went light touch because again, we've talked about this where it's like light touch or kill the comp. Keeper was a comp that was just starting to emerge. So I'm glad we didn't kill the comp. I'm glad we still got to see it in tournaments. Pretty happy with this change.
Yeah, overall, like small changes like this have been positive. It doesn't shift the comp into like unplayable, and so all these players who actually enjoy playing the comp are now like, well, I can't play my comp. But like keepers is still very playable. It still actually might be. I mean, it's still actually kind of strong, but yeah, overall happy with like just this small shift that we did.
Yep. Okay, Vanguard. We lowered the armor at 8 and we lowered the MR at all levels. I have thoughts here, but Kent, why don't you go first? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the Vanguard 8 nerf might not have been necessary. I think the comp was doing really well, but I think just if we had just touched MR at all levels, that might have been enough to bring down even Vanguard 8, because getting to that point, getting to Vanguard 8 is also tougher because all your Vanguards are slightly more susceptible to magic damage. And so the correct move may have just been leave the armor and hit the MR.
Yeah, I think you're right. like I said, I was a big Vanguard 8 player in the previous patch. And according to the data that I saw the same data you did, Vanguard 8 looked nutty. It looked underplayed, but surprisingly good. But yeah, I think you kind of went a little hard because now the jump from 6 to 8 is so small it barely feels worth, and oftentimes now you're playing 6 with the Mystics and other things like that. I do agree just hitting the magic resist would have been the way to go, especially because now like 8 Vanguard is getting melted by Last Whisper, which is like, that feels like where you should be like, hey, I countered your Last Whisper by going 1,000 armor. Not so much anymore. But again, small thing. And the reason I'm not freaking out over this is because 8 Vanguard wasn't really played much. So we didn't like destroy the meta or ruin a comp a lot of people were playing. It was more like a comp that, yeah, I have some biases towards and a few people enjoyed, kind of went away. So no big deal there.
Yeah, but the takeaway here, though, is I think it's also just like, we went small with the keepers. We probably should have not went as hard on Vanguards as we did. And so, it's learning.
Yep, good call out. All right, Diana shield buff. This one, I think, was fine. I mean, Diana seems like she's doing okay. The only comp that seems to be seeing a lot of action that this really affected is actually the Tristana Spirit reroll comp. And I don't think this changed anything here. So this, based on the data we saw in Diana being small, this seems like it was a safe change. If anything, by not buffing her damage, Assassin didn't benefit very much. But otherwise seems okay.
Yeah, I mean, with this change, we were going for like, Diana has a different profile than other assassins by being more like bruisery. You build like Titan's Resolve, you build Gunblade, you make her like the bruiser carry rather than the big damage burst. So we wanted to lean on that, but then I think it ultimately didn't buff her to like a point where you want to run her as your carry. And she is still falling off from what we've seen. So it didn't, I think it just, maybe it wasn't enough of a change. We only hit one part of her kit. But overall, like we wanted to be safe about it. And so that's why we did what we did. But I don't think it brought her into as good of a spot as we wanted it to.
Yeah, I think the thing to call out, though, is like, again, we should be being really safe and really careful with these changes. And so even if this didn't quite get Diana perfect, I think this was the right amount of change to do in a patch at this point. So
yeah, I agree. Definitely don't want to go too far on anything, especially in the 1-cost bucket.
Yep. Okay, Nasus 3 buff. I've had a lot of experience with this one since the buff, and I actually feel like Nasus is finally exactly where he should be, which is like, he's scary early, he's scary really early with items. If you high roll a Nasus 3 at like 3-1, it's scary and it'll get you through the mid game, but you aren't first placing with it. He's not going to cast enough, he's not going to do enough damage first place. You've really got to get the rest of the comp going, and that's what a 1-cost 3-star should be. So I finally feel like Nasus is like right where he should be.
I think I agree there. Yeah, he's still really good in like as a 2-cost like item holder and everything. And then when you hit the 3-cost or the 3-star, you just have to like play and make sure you have a plan for the late game. Kind of the way 1-cost carries should be. They'll fall off at some point, and you have a plan. And so it does seem like when you hit that 3-star, it's paying off, but it's just not paying off forever, which is great. Seems like a good spot for him.
Yep, cool. Nidalee was the other one we snuck in because, again, both Nidalee and Nasus in our data looked like the worst champs in the game. This was a big buff to Nidalee. Now, admittedly, I don't have as much experience, although it's funny, Nidalee is one of the chosens on my list I still haven't done. I just can't seem to find her. This was a big change, and it seems like it helped a bit, but weirdly enough, the comp it seemed to help more than Warlords was the Spirit Sharpshooter comp. So it's a little weird. But like I said, I'm kind of misinformed on this one here. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the power, like this made Nidalee a lot better of an early game pickup. I'm happy to run her as like the early game item holder, or just as a support that picks off that one unit that helps you save 2 HP. So she's definitely gotten a lot better. I think the power of her not being run as a 3-star, I think is more of a more points to like Warlords not being strong enough, probably, rather than just specifically Nidalee.
Okay, fair enough. It'll be interesting to see where she lands when we get our next data dump. Because again, she was like literally the worst champ in the game, especially at 3-star. So it'll be interesting to see where she ends up after this. So
Yeah, she looks pretty bad in the data.
all right, Yasuo. This is a weird change because I think this change was correct. Again, from what we saw in the data where Yasuo was, I think it landed well. I think it actually helped high elo. I think it had one side effect though, and this is a really interesting one we don't pay that much attention to. I think it kind of destroyed like gold and below elo. I made a new account on LAN as part of this experiment and was starting to climb and have been kind of paying attention to low elo, and it's like there are a lot of duelist players in low elo. It's kind of fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that is a good point. I think Yasuo was popular then there even before the buffs, and so like after the buffs, it's just well everyone wants to play Yasuo, and so that is an interesting result.
Yeah. And I mean, according to our data, even at high elo, like Callista seems to be doing well. So it certainly put like duelist back on the map. It just kind of shows you how one small change can affect an entire comp in a very interesting way. But again, if we do say we balance around top 1%, and for top 1%, I think this change was correct. So
Yeah, I think it was kind of surprising how like such a small buff it ended up being having such like a large impact. And I think we talked about this briefly, and it's like it impacts your perception of him being good, and everyone ends up trying it and like optimizing it, and it becomes a lot better.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Janna. Last patch, the Janna hater said, nope, Janna needs to be nerfed. Nerfed her to oblivion.
Barely.
I will say, it's crazy because, again, it's such a small change. But I find myself, and again, this could just be a perception thing, I find myself not as interested in Mystic Janna anymore.
I think she's actually finally in a balanced state where like she's not an instant pickup anymore. It's like she is definitely, to me she's definitely still good, and I will run Janna's even without like Mystic or Enlightened active. I'll just run Janna if I need a 5th unit on my level 5 board. But yeah, just certainly not like in OP levels anymore. That's where I think she landed.
I'll be interested to see the data here because I agree with you data wise she was too strong, and like that's why we did the nerf. But what's interesting is if a utility champion is strong, is that good for the game? Because obviously if a carry is strong, people run the carry, right? But we just don't see people looking at a utility champion and going, that's the chosen I want. Chosen Yuumi and chosen Janna not bought that often. So did this shift Janna down to like super balanced or even underpowered? Like play rate wise, did we see a big shift? I'll be very curious.
I feel like Chosen Janna was always picked up. I don't think there was like you see a Chosen Janna, you're like, I don't know if I should pick this up before this nerf. But I think after this nerf, you kind of have to make that consideration. So I think so. I think we should look at the data. But yeah, I feel like she was.
I want to see the play rate difference, right? Like if it went from like let's say a number to like a fourth of that number. Like, will we see a transformation that dramatic? Or is it just like, she went down in power, she's fine, and her play rate went down like 10%. No big deal.
Yeah,
that's what I'll be curious.
That'd be really interesting to see. Because overall this change isn't that big. To see that big of a drop rate, that would be interesting to like gauge for future changes too.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you pre-level at 4 and you see a chosen Janna at 2-1, you're taking the Janna at 2-1. No argument there. The question is, do you take the Janna at 3-1? And I think before the answer was yes, and I think now the answer is like, probably not.
I still take the Janna at 4-1.
That's because you hate Janna. All right, moving on. I'm going to talk about Lulu and Vygar in the same comment a little bit, because these two were targeted at helping Elderwood. And from what I've seen, they actually had the opposite effect, where they didn't really help Elderwood much at all, and we're still not seeing much Elderwood. But they helped Mage a bit, in a good way, that like now Mage is actually one of the comps that can be run even in tournaments and win the game. And just having that like help in the early to mid game to get to the Aurelion Soul state or the Annie 3 state has helped Mages. So I'll take it as a win, but it didn't accomplish the goal it set out to.
Yeah, I think part of that not accomplishing the goal of like bringing Elderwood back up, I think it's related to the prevalence of Last Whisper. We're seeing a lot of Last Whispers being built, and it just makes the Elderwood trait not be very effective. But as far as like the changes on the units, I think Lulu has become a lot better of a unit, and Vygar has been played, although not as much as a carry, but as like the mid game stabilizer.
Right.
We're seeing a lot more of that. So overall, I think these changes are like positive. It just didn't fulfill exactly the goal of help Elderwood.
Yep. Yep. Cool. Akali change. This just seems like a net win. We're still not seeing a ton of Akali like dominating tournaments or anything like that, but she's no longer the worst 3 cost, and like there are uses now where people are running her. She's very good in the early game, and on ladder at least there are certainly Akalis that are winning even more than they were before. So just felt like the right amount of change.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Cool. Sivir's another one. I think this was, again, the right amount of change. Sivir 2 is still strong in the mid game, can still do well against keepers. Sivir 3 is now no longer like the most powerful carry in the end game, but still really good. Seems like a solid directional change where like we did what we want to do. Sivir's not OP, she's balanced.
Yeah, she's certainly still really good. She's just not as OP as she was before, which is great. I think this is perfect. Or like this Sivir 3 change like did what we wanted it to do, so it was good.
Yep. All right, Aurelion Soul Trapclaw. I mean, this one's just a good change. It's glad that Trapclaw works. I don't see many people building Trapclaw or anything like that, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I don't think this brought up play rate of Trapclaw in any way, but like this interaction needed to be fixed, so this was a good change.
Yep. Morgana tooltip. Yep. Glad we did that. The Sejuani nerf. This one was interesting because I think a lot more people wanted to see the Aatrox nerf as opposed to the Sejuani nerf, but our data showed that Sejuani was doing better than Aatrox, so we went with Sejuani. Seems like she's still a damn good character. Seems really fine, so no issues here to me. It seems like another win.
I agree, yeah. She's still really good, just not as good as she was before, so I think it worked out.
Yep. Okay, the Samira change. This one, I gotta be honest with you, I haven't noticed it. Like, Deathblade Samira is still good. Last Whisper Samira is still good. Not those items Samira is still not as good. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like, I haven't paid enough attention, but I'm not noticing this.
Yeah, I think this definitely brought down like how good Deathblade Samira was against like, for example, Giant Slayer or like Crit Samira. Deathblade is still like best in slot, and like if you look at the data, Deathblade is still best in slot, but the other items are also performing better, and so I think this is a net win. Perhaps we can go even further on like shifting the damage more, but it actually seems like Samira is like in a pretty good spot balance wise right now.
I'm gonna push back on that a little. Like Samira, I think is like the best endgame carry in the game, right? If you can manage the 2-star Samira with AD items and probably a QS or a GA, you probably have the best carry in the game. Am I wrong?
I think that's more of a result of like the Slayer comp being really expensive, and so having a high cap. I mean, I would argue that like Swain might be up there.
No,
a fully stacked
Mage
Swain.
Maybe Mage Swain. I'll give you a Mage Swain, but I don't think normal Swain is beating a 2-star Samira comp.
I don't know if Samira always has the damage to take down a very tanky 2-star Swain with Siphoners in. But yeah, I mean, Samira is definitely one of the best like premier 5 cost carries. You have to hit the items. You have to get her to be able to cast.
Sure. So my question is, did this change just buff Samira? Period. Right. Like, did we just take her low end and buff it to where it is, and the high end? Yeah, it went down a little, but like it's still really good. So the end result was just Samira is over buffed. And I'm more asking. I don't know.
Yeah. That's one thing I was afraid of was happening, but based on her data last patch, and even just looking at the data from this patch, she seems to still be in that like strong but not OP spot. Definitely something to like continue monitoring as the meta shifts and we're moving the power levels of other units around her.
Yeah.
But for now, she seems to be in a decent spot.
Okay. Fair enough. The Yone change. So this one I'm going to talk about. So again, on my LAN climb, I ended up playing a lot of Adept and a lot of Yone. This change is so good. So good. Because you can play Yone without blue buff. You can. And he's better, and he feels better, and he feels great. But you still want blue buff. Like, blue buff is still best in slot on Yone. It didn't change that. Because without it, he's kind of slow and can't really execute the backline fast enough without it. But again, like, not being hard bound to it is huge. So I love this change. This is like my MVP change of the patch.
Yeah, I have been playing a lot more Yone now ever since this change, and he just feels so good to play. Like, you just put some damage items on him, he's actually doing good damage, and the cadence is actually coming. He's not so slow, like as you mentioned. So yeah, I love this change.
All right, the Deathblade nerf. I'm just going to say this was a good change. It made Deathblade not the best. It did shift the paradigm a lot more into Last Whisper, which could be conceived as a bad, but overall, I think this was a good change.
Yeah, I think this was necessary.
So, the Trap Claw change, we already talked about. That was good. Static Shiv change, I don't think this was worth the patch note space. I continue to look at this and just be like, what did this do? I mean, I called that out in the patch rundown, and I'm calling it out here. This is like, why? I mean, and the funny thing is, Shiv is finally finding its use, right? Like, people are running it in keeper comps. You put it on a Xayah, and it works fine. So it's like, I'm not saying the item's bad. I'm just not sure this was worth the patch note.
Yeah, I think the item is kind of hard to appreciate because, like, you see the damage pop up as 65, but then it's critting and it's also hitting multiple targets, and so it ends up being a decent amount of damage. But I do see that, like, I mean, this buff didn't really increase its usage more than before, and so
I'd like to see us avoid changes like this unless we really think they're going to have the impact we're looking for personally. But
yeah, I see what you mean.
Cool. Okay, some UX improvements. Those are obviously good. We should do those. We fixed bugs. Obviously, we should fix bugs. Though I do want to call out the Bertosaurus bug. Unfortunately, Bert got knocked out in the top 24, so I was a little sad to see that. But well.
Yeah, the balance, the bug fix worked.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bert.
And then the only other thing was somehow we accidentally shipped that bug where one-cost Chosens could appear at level 7 shops. And basically, from what I understand, that is because rounding errors exist.
Yeah, I don't want to get too technical, but basically, like, the system is really odd in that it stores numbers as, like, instead of round numbers, it stores like as like 0.999999034 or whatever, and that little percentage chance gets defaulted to one cost, and so one cost started showing up on rare occasions.
Yeah. So it's fixed though. So yeah. So end result of all these changes was we had a pretty good tournament. Like, watching the tournaments over the weekend was really good. The ladder meta's been good. The other thing to obviously call out is we're still seeing new comps emerge. Last week it was Keepers. This week it's Spirit Tristana reroll. And it's really hilarious because the player reaction whenever they see a new comp is it's like, it's the new hotness, it's overpowered, Riot must nerf. When actually, from what we can tell, like, the Spirit Tristana comp is quite balanced, actually. It's like, it's very strong when it turns on, but, like, if you get contested, if you don't hit, like, oh my god, you're a doomed eighth.
Yep. You gotta get the items, you gotta hit, and then you gotta be able to, like, be able to create a front line with items. Just overall, like,
triple locket.
Yeah, with locket. And so it's the comp seems like a fairly balanced, basically. So
yeah. So overall, I call this patch a success. And the thing I'll call out is we're now at the point, and again, we were kind of there last week, but we're even more there now, where, like, Festival of Beasts is balanced. There's some minor things here and there. But you're not going to see any more changes for the rest of the set, like any big changes. You're going to see really, really tiny nudges to just, like, nudge things in the right direction and nudge the things that aren't working. And in fact, what you'll even see is, like, you're going to see, like, hey, you didn't hit this. And it's like, well, yeah, because we hit this thing over here and that might have a domino effect and we don't want to hit 2 dominoes. So we're being very careful from here on out. But overall, we'll talk about that in the patch rundown. So that's it for the patch post-mortem. I'm enjoying the tournaments, though. They're super fun to watch.
Agree. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next or this weekend's.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of pressure. So, all right, that's gonna do it for us. So until next time, take it easy.